Last Wednesday morning, I was driving early to my church office to lead an online prayer meeting with some pastor friends. As I approached a public housing community that I pass every day, I thought it was odd that there were cars lining both sides of the street, with parents and children just milling around on the sidewalk. I thought, okay, it's the third day of school. Maybe they're driving their kids to the bus stop? Well, slowly I came around the corner and I saw the flashing lights. Two ambulances and who knows how many other first responders blocking the entire roadway. I had that sinking feeling, oh no, this cannot be good. I thought maybe a child had gotten struck by a vehicle or something, and I started to pray as I turned around and took a different route to church. Well, after our prayer meeting, where we prayed for this unknown incident, I got online and I discovered it was far worse than I had even imagined. A 17-year-old high school student had been shot to death at the school bus stop right there. Apparently, some kids got out of a car and picked a fight with this student and ended up shooting him in the back of the head right there in front of the school bus. All the other students watching in horror. And then they got back in the car and sped off. All of this happened in my church's own neighborhood, just 1 mile from where I'm sitting right now. Obviously, our whole community is reeling. Can you imagine how the rest of the high school had to try and get through their third day of classes after they learned what happened that morning? Can you imagine being one of the rest of the 15 students on that bus, living the rest of their lives with those horrific images stuck in their heads? Well, the police have since arrested an 18-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And the rest of us in the community are left asking the questions, why? Why do terrible things like this keep happening? Why here? Why pick the fight? Why bring the guns? Why? We may never know how to answer all those questions. And certainly there have to be a multitude of reasons behind the whys. But today I want to talk about just one of the whys. Our society has lost its grip on simple human respect. Respect for authority, respect for life, respect for the humanity of the other. Let me explain. When did humanity begin to lose respect for human life? Well, you go all the way back to the very second generation of humanity. Adam and Eve's son Cain struck his brother Abel in the head with a rock. Why? Because he was jealous that Abel's offering was accepted by God and his own half-hearted offering was not. It was the first murder. This is why Genesis 1 verse 27 is so important, and it's why I keep coming back to it. It says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." We need to keep speaking and pondering and teaching this foundational truth because our world has lost sight of it completely. Every human being has worth and dignity and value because every human being is made in God's very own image. Now, do you realize that almost every sin starts with self-focused pride? From the serpent's first tempting words in the Garden of Eden to the latest selfish thought that just flashed across my brain, sin always begins with a form of removing God from his rightful place of lordship over me. Did God really say? Does God really know what's best for me? In essence, every sin is us saying, I don't care if God created me in his image. He doesn't define me. I get to define myself after my own image. Some sins are only internal, but every sin that is against another human being takes an additional step. After we take God out of the equation for defining our own dignity, we take the image of God out of the equation for defining another person's dignity. To sin against another person, you have to ignore or tear down your respect for them. To cheat another person, to lie to another person, or to gossip about a person has at its root a disrespect for the image of God in that person. And here's the truth that no one in the world wants to admit. Every single one of us has this problem of disrespecting other people enough to sin against them. I want to read for you a parable that Jesus told. This is from Luke chapter 20, verses 9 through 15. He said, "A man planted a vineyard and let it out to tenants and went into another country for a long while. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants so that they would give him some of the fruits of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent another servant, but they also beat and treated him shamefully and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent yet a third. This one also they wounded and cast out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, 'What shall I do? I will send my beloved son. Perhaps they will respect him.' But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, 'This is the heir. Let us kill him so that the inheritance may be ours.' And they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him." So Jesus told this parable to teach something about himself. Jesus was talking about the way the Jewish religious leaders of his time would kill him, because he was the true son of the heavenly king, the owner of the vineyard of Israel. And they were rejecting the coming of the promised son, the Messiah. But there is another truth to see in this story. Even on a human level, each person that the vineyard owner sent inherently deserved respect from the tenants. That's why the story makes sense to those who hear it. They deserve not to be beaten or put to death. But because the tenants lost respect for their humanity, they did whatever they wanted to them to get their own way. And another point in this story is that we are all like the vineyard tenants who disrespect others to the point of dehumanizing them. Now, listen to what Paul says in Romans 14, verse 10. He says, "Why do you pass judgment on your brother? Or you, why do you despise your brother? For we will all stand before the judgment seat of God." That verb that Paul uses there is a Greek word that means to despise someone or something on the basis that it is worthless or of no value. So let me ask you a question. Whom do you despise? Do you realize that when you judge someone in your heart, you are despising them? And that means you are treating them as though they have zero value as a human being, as an image bearer of God the Creator. Our young people especially are being raised in a culture that is hell-bent on despising and dehumanizing our neighbors. So how do we restore a baseline of mutual human respect, especially among the young people of our society? Well, I thought about it this way. We need to demand respect and also deserve respect. Our society tends to go with one or the other, or neither, but rarely with both. Some people demand respect and relate to others only based on the principle of fear. Respect me or else. This is exactly why in this moment we keep seeing so many mass shootings or people driving vehicles into crowds. Their perceived lack of respect by society results in their dehumanizing of those whom they have been demanding respect from and not receiving. And this relentless demand for personal respect also plagues our social media. Because without being face to face, it's easy to demand respect from others, but it's also easy to give no respect to those with whom you disagree. On the other hand, sometimes our society tries to deserve respect without demanding it. Think about our schools. Just recently, the University of Michigan announced that they are dropping giving out letter grades to the freshman students because they want to guard their mental health. Administrators and teachers throughout all levels of schools are afraid to discipline students because they don't want to appear judgmental. Teachers don't demand respect in the classroom anymore because they can't. It's not allowed. And what's the result? Students don't learn how to respect. Certainly not other adults, but also not their fellow students. Our young people need help today. They need to learn how to respect themselves and how to respect others. They need to be held to a high standard of giving respect. Training young people to love their neighbors as themselves requires respect to move in two directions, demanding it and deserving it. It sounds odd talking about demanding and deserving respect, but I want you to see how Paul emphasizes both sides of the equation in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. He says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and your mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline of the Lord." So to honor someone means to attribute high status to them. Children are commanded, as one of the 10 commandments, to honor and respect their parents. It's a requirement based on God's image in our mutual humanity. And at the same time, parents need to be respectable to their children by not provoking them to anger. Now, notice that it does not say parents respect your children equally by letting them remain immature and self-centered. No, parents need to model respect and teach respect. Now, those young men last Wednesday unhumaned a 17-year-old image bearer of God at that bus stop. Actually, the unhumaning happened well before the incident, whenever they stopped respecting him as a person, filled with dignity and value. But they're not alone in the blame. We've got work as a society to do. We need to rebuild basic human respectfulness, especially among our young people. Demand their respect and deserve their respect. Teach it and model it. And by the way, will you say a prayer for our community? Because we're hurting. As always, God's Word has all the wisdom you need for today's challenges.